This week on Jerusalem Dateline, the Russian Jews aboard this cruise ship are on a one-way journey to their biblical homeland. Plus, our interview with Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, one of the strongest advocates for Israel in the U.S. government, and how the Russian Orthodox Church is gaining influence in the Russian government, and why that's a concern for the nation's evangelicals. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. We're coming to you this week from Moscow, Russia, where there was an important meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Russian President Vladimir Putin. While the world powers met with Iranian negotiators in Geneva, both Netanyahu and Putin took different views on those talks. Putin was optimistic.
We hope in the near future a deal will be announced acceptable to all the sides.
Netanyahu warned once again about the danger of a nuclear Iran.
The biggest threat against us and against global security is Iran's effort to arm itself with nuclear weapons.
Netanyahu's attempt to change Putin's mind is a long shot.
Well, I think the Prime Minister tried to convince Putin that agreement with Iran at the moment will be a bad idea. But I think he knew that it will be a very hard task. And from what we saw in the press conference, I think that both sides basically agreed not to agree.
Netanyahu's visit here to Moscow is just one part of an all-out diplomatic campaign by Israel to stop the international community from striking a deal with Iran that would allow it to get a nuclear device. They don't want Geneva 2013 to become Munich 1938. That's when the Western powers appeased Adolf Hitler and he took over Czechoslovakia. That agreement sowed the seeds for World War II.
The deal on the table is a deal that gives the Iranians exactly what they want. It's a dream deal. They don't have to make any significant concessions. And at the same time, they get easing of the sanctions. For them, it's a dream deal, a dream deal. And we're concerned that for the international community, it'll be a nightmare.
Mark Regev, spokesman for the Prime Minister, says Iran is not just an Israeli problem.
It's obvious that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat to Israel. That's clear. But it's also a threat to the world. I'd remind you, the Iranians are working on intercontinental ballistic missiles, missiles that can carry nuclear payloads. Now, they don't need those missiles for Israel because they've already got missiles that can target Israel. Those missiles are being built for targets way beyond the Middle East, in Europe and in North America.
But will Israel attack Iran's nuclear facilities? In a statement designed to remind negotiators in Geneva a military option is very much alive, Israel's former national security advisor, Yaakov Amidror, told the Financial Times, "We have enough to stop the Iranians for a very long time. We are not bluffing. We are very serious, preparing ourselves for the possibility that Israel will have to defend itself by itself." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a gathering of local Jewish leaders in Moscow Israel would not obligate itself to a bad deal and promised those Jewish leaders Iran would not get nuclear weapons.
I think it's been a tremendously uphill battle because you're dealing, first of all, you're going up publicly against the U.S., your greatest ally, and then you have to push all these other countries who generally are following the U.S. on this matter, except for Russia and China.
Yet it's having an influence.
Netanyahu standing up on every rooftop and screaming this is a bad agreement, I think it does have an impact on those who are sitting in the room with the Iranians.
While Iranians negotiated in that room in Geneva, their supreme leader Khamenei made some provocative statements. Khamenei called Netanyahu the sinister mouth of the unclean rabid dog of the region in the Zionist regime. He added, the Zionist regime is an imposed regime, and this regime will not endure. Netanyahu told CBN News in an off-camera briefing that securing the future of the Jewish state is what moves him. Kanan says Netanyahu feels called for such a time as this in Jewish history.
He feels Jewish history. He feels the weight of Jewish history. I think he feels the responsibility of Jewish history. You have a regime right now which is threatening to annihilate the state of Israel. Right? I think he feels very much an historical role of preventing that. Right? Come what may. If it means creating some tension with the U.S., then so be it. If it means standing up in the face of world opinion, so be it. If it means taking some bad New York Times editorials, so be it. That's why I'm here. That's my role. That perhaps is my fate, and that's what I'm going to do.
Some compare Netanyahu to the Churchill of our time. Behind me is the Kremlin and Red Square. This is my first visit to Moscow, and it's kind of a fascinating experience because when I was a child, I watched many military parades here during the Cold War. But since the fall of communism, more than 1 million Soviet Jews have immigrated from Russia to the nation of Israel. And many people believe it's a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. In 2004, just 5 years after the fall of communism, I took a trip with Russian Jews who were making Aliyah to the Jewish state. This bus is filled with immigrants from the former Soviet Union on their way to Israel. By bus, they'll head to a waiting ship. The unique thing about this ship is a Christian organization provides the passage for these immigrants, or Olim as they are called in Hebrew. The organization is called Ebenezer Emergency Fund. Vadim Rabochi is their base leader in the Ukrainian port of Odessa.
We just helping Jewish people to come back home to Israel, and by all means.
After the Ebenezer volunteers salute the immigrants, the ship sets sail, and within a few hours, the ship plows through the dark waters of the Black Sea. Richard Gaudier is international chairman of Ebenezer.
Jeremiah made the comment that the day will come when you will actually forget the God who opened the Red Sea and brought you out of Egypt. So great will be the return of my people from the land of the north and all the countries where I sent them. And this Aliyah is one of the great miracles of all time.
For many of these Jews on board, the trip is actually the final step in a process that began months or years before. This scene happens all over the former Soviet Union. Ebenezer volunteers go on what they call a fishing expedition. These volunteers search for Jews. They help them with the documentation needed to make Aliyah and share with them the promises God made in the Bible to Jews returning to Israel. For centuries, Jews have practiced their faith in the rugged conditions of the former Soviet Union or Tsarist Russia. Today, some of them find themselves living in crushing poverty and primitive conditions. These harsh conditions and hard decisions they face seem etched on the faces of many of these Jews. Some bear the scars of anti-Semitism, like this woman whose brother was killed because he was Jewish. Back on board the ship, the situation for the Olim is far different than some of the harsh conditions they might have come from. During the voyage, immigrants and Ebenezer volunteers celebrate. The celebration reflects the scripture that says, the Jews will return to Zion with singing and dancing.
I believe that we're probably on the threshold of the greatest ingathering of the Jewish people. It seems possible, and we have many words from intercessors that there will be a huge exodus from the nations of the world into the land of Israel, and this seems to be entirely in accordance with biblical prophecy.
One of those prophecies is Jeremiah 31:10. It says, "Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him and keep him, as a shepherd does his flock." Joan Thomas, the International Prayer Coordinator of Ebenezer, says the fulfillment of Scripture and prayer are tied together.
Prayer and Aliyah are absolutely heart to heart. In Scripture, there are so many promises that God gives through the Word that in the end times He's going to regather His people.
Thomas and her intercessors from around the world both proclaim the promises of Scripture and pray that these routes, which they say the Bible calls holy highways, remain open and safe. Throughout the voyage, the Christian volunteers try to help the families make the transition to Israel. The prophet Isaiah said Gentiles would have a specific role in bringing Jews back to Israel. Isaiah 49:22 says, "Behold, I will lift up my hand to the Gentiles and set up my standard to the people, and they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried upon their shoulders." This Russian couple felt amazed at the help given to them by Christians.
You know, it's impossible to explain to our friends who stayed back in the Ukraine that all the assistance and all the help that we received here is free of charge and just out of love.
After 3 days, the immigrants see the land of Israel for the first time. While they've made a 3-day voyage, it's been a trip 3,000 years in the making. For those leaving the ship, It's the start of a new life. Many believe their exodus is both a miracle and a message to the world that God is faithful to His word and He will gather His people to His land. Up next, our talk with U.S. Congresswoman and Tea Party leader Michelle Bachmann. Her views on Iran and the Obama administration's rocky relationship with Israel.
Hi, my name is Breda. I'm just your typical 9-year-old. I love singing, dancing, reading, discovering the simple truth. My grandpa says you're never too young or old to learn the value of a dog. He taught me the true value of this paper dog. You see this little gold coin? It says $1 on it. But guess what? That was a long time ago. Today, this gold dollar is worth over 100 paper dollars. This paper dollar is now only worth 1 penny compared to America's former money, the gold dollar. My grandpa says the only money worth saving today is real money, gold or silver coins. He's pretty smart. How our paper dollars lost their value, he says. It's all explained in a new book, The Great Debasement. It's easy and fun to read. If you call the number on the screen, I will send you a copy totally free. Next time, I'll explain the simple truth about money.
Help! If an emergency happened right now, you can have help at the push of a button with Medical Alert.
Remember when I took that fall, Mary?
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
Yes, it was. Help! And I thought, what if you hadn't been there? I ordered my Medical Alert the next day.
I can't describe how safe I feel now with my Medical Alert. You didn't know I was wearing it, did you?
Medical Alert is easy to install, waterproof, and covers you inside your home and out.
It helps me feel safe from fires, break-ins.
And of course, a Medical Alert. And if you don't have a home phone, don't worry. They have that covered.
There's always help at the push of a button. Don't wait till you need it.
Get Medical Alert for less than $1 a day. There are no long-term contracts. Order now and get your second button free. Call for your free brochure.
For your free Medical Alert system with second button free, call 800-575-8507.
Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann from Minnesota is a strong advocate of the nation of Israel. Recently, we sat down in our Jerusalem studios to talk about the threat of Iran and the Obama administration's Middle East policy. Congressman Bachmann, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you. What a privilege to be able to be here.
Real pleasure. You're here with a congressional tour, and it's a sort of a unique tour. You've gone to places that congressional tours typically don't go. What's your impressions after the last few days?
It's been absolutely inspiring to be able to be here. The places that we've been to have been phenomenal. I think something that was so meaningful to me was to be able to go to the city called Shiloh, and that was the first capital of Israel. It's the site of the Ark for 369 years. We were able to stand where the Ark at one time was. And we had a time of prayer and worship and Bible study as members of Congress.
You were in a place that the world typically calls occupied territories, and a lot of people think that's the future Palestinian state. Why was it important for a congressional delegation to be there?
This land was designated by God from ages as He gave His covenant to Abram. It was important for us as members of Congress to be in this particular land because Israel has every legal right to be in this land. We were also able to plant vines. In Jeremiah 31, it says that there will be a return of the vineyards to this exact spot, and we as members of Congress were able to physically put our hands in the dirt in fulfillment of Jeremiah 31.
I know you also recently had a visit to Egypt, and you talked with General al-Sisi.
I did.
What message did he tell you?
General al-Sisi told me personally that we enjoy, meaning Egypt, we enjoy the best working relationship with Israel that we've had in 35 years. Egypt has been cooperating with Israel to clean out all of the nests of terrorists between the Sinai and the tunnels between Egypt and Israel. And he was very distressed at how the United States has turned its back on Egypt, because the Obama administration was very open. They couldn't give enough billions of U.S. tax dollars to the terrorist organization known as the Muslim Brotherhood. But when the Egyptian people threw out the violent Muslim Brotherhood and instead brought in General al-Sisi and interim President Mansour. Then the Obama administration turned their back essentially on Egypt, and they turned off the money supply. He also said to me, is America still with us in the global war on terror? They don't understand our foreign policy anymore. I see that as a member of Congress. I'm stunned at the breathtaking reversal that we've seen here in the Middle East. And that's why it's imperative that we members of Congress are here now. We're sending a very different message from the Obama administration. While we respect our president, and he is our president, we as members of Congress do not agree with the current stance of the administration. We reject the violent Muslim Brotherhood. We reject the goals of the terrorist organization known as the Muslim Brotherhood. We stand with Israel, and we stand with what General al-Sisi and President Mansour are trying to do in Egypt.
Do you see a similar pattern in Iran right now, where they're trying to negotiate with the Islamic regime to stop its nuclear program? And what do you think of that kind of approach?
The Obama administration is coming out and wanting to reverse its policy position regarding Iran. Just when economic sanctions are really working, we've got Iran exactly where they're about to have their back broken. They're down on their knees, and just when they're down on their knees, the Obama administration wants to pull all the pressure back, and they want to give Iran the space they need, in addition to the luxury of time, to finish their project of developing a nuclear weapon. Khamenei has made it completely clear. He plans for the extinction of the Jewish state of Israel through gaining a nuclear weapon. So why would President Obama engage in a mad foreign policy that would be to help Khamenei reach his goal of the extinction of the Jewish state of Israel? I can't abide by that as one of the people's elected representatives. And that's why I'm giving voice now here in the Jewish state of Israel to the Jewish people. I completely disagree with the American administration's foreign policy goals, which I see as madness, because Khamenei will not only use a nuclear weapon against Israel, they will use it against any other Western civilization. They will use it against Europe. They will use a nuclear weapon against the United States of America. Don't think for a moment that they won't. They will. They seek the elimination of the United States just as surely as they seek the elimination of the Jewish state of Israel. It changes the dynamic of the balance of power forever, and there's no going back.
Congresswoman Bachmann, thank you very much for being with us on Jerusalem Dateline.
It's always a privilege, and blessings on CBN.
Thank you. Up next, the cozy bond between the Russian government and the Orthodox Church, and how it could affect religious freedom.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans. with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right. You could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm standing in Red Square, and behind me is St. Basil's, built by the Russian Emperor Ivan the Terrible in 1561. Most Russians belong to the Orthodox Church. During the Soviet days, they were persecuted, but in recent times, they've grown in size and influence. Now they have a good relationship with the Russian government. And as George Thomas tells us, that's a concern for Russian evangelicals.
For 8 years, Yuri Sipko ran one of the largest Baptist organizations in Russia. Now, 20 years after the fall of communism, he worries about the growing threats against the country's evangelical movement.
The collapse of communism was supposed to usher in an era of greater religious freedom, but I'm concerned we're moving in the wrong direction.
And what makes evangelical Christians here in Russia very uncomfortable is this emerging, apparent, cozy relationship between the Russian government and the Russian Orthodox Church.
For example, the government recently introduced religious classes based on the principles of the Orthodox Church in public schools. Then late last year, the Russian president announced an initiative to appoint Orthodox chaplains to all army units. Our constitution clearly states no religion can be a state religion.
Russian watchers credit these two men, Prime Minister Vladimir Putin and President Dmitry Medvedev, for elevating the church's prominence. The media has also played a key role, often showing the leaders attending church services. Sergei Rakovsky knows both men well. As head of Russia's Pentecostal Union, he meets regularly with top government and Orthodox Church leaders. He worries that the Orthodox Church's influence is coming at the expense of religious freedom.
There are so many laws and bylaws that regulate religious life in Russia. For example, evangelical Christians just can't go out and buy a church or buy a piece of land to build a church.
The Orthodox Church, on the other hand, has had it easy in recent times after decades of state persecution. Churches destroyed during the Soviet era are being rebuilt with Russian taxpayer money. In the past 20 years, the government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars, restoring some 23,000 churches. Most Russians say they belong to the Orthodox Church, yet we found mixed reactions on the streets of Moscow to the growing bond between church and state.
I belong to the church, and I'm happy to see our leaders embrace the institution.
But we just need to look to the Islamic countries in the Middle East to see the potential dangers of such a strong relationship between religion and state.
Roman Lankin is a human rights advocate based in Moscow. He says the head of the Orthodox Church is on a mission to expand its powers and influence.
Patriarch Kirill, the new head of the Russian Orthodox Church, is attempting to turn the church into a more missionary-oriented religion and to depart from the old image of Orthodoxy as a museum religion that is old and out of date.
The Orthodox Church's biggest competitors are the evangelical charismatic congregations.
So many Russians are leaving the Orthodox Church and joining the charismatic churches, and they don't like it.
Raikovsky gave CBN News a document produced by a leading Russian research group and backed by the Orthodox Church. The study is titled Ways to Weaken the Potential of Neo-Pentecostal Sects and to Help Their Victims.
These new charismatic and Pentecostal churches are viewed as cults and something to be suspicious of.
Once a persecuted minority, evangelical Christians are exerting more influence in society by displaying what it means to be a true follower of Jesus Christ.
People are looking for meaning, they're looking for authentic lifestyles, authentic relationships. And so in the midst of all the economic and social changes, we have the opportunity to demonstrate what a personal relationship with Jesus is like.
George Thomas, CBN News, in Moscow.
Up next, how the nation of Israel is helping to treat survivors of Typhoon Haiyan.
Grace
music is unpredictable.
I know I have what it takes.
The Dove Foundation raves. Grace Unplugged is remarkable and inspiring.
This is not about the music, it's about everything else that goes with it.
Dad, were you watching me?
A moving and meaningful film.
This book, his words shook me. It was like my whole world.
That parents and teens should see together, says Focus on the Family.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna drag her back home?
Yeah, I might.
I think maybe you're fighting God. Just stop running.
Grace Unplugged, rated PG, now playing.
If you had a choice between going bald and a full head of hair, which would you choose? Advances in medical science have resulted in the world's first and only permanent solution to hair loss.
Yes!
You wash it, you cut it. It's your own real, naturally growing hair. When it comes to hair restoration, no one in the world has more experience than Bosley. The results look completely natural and are affordable on nearly any budget. But the entire process can't be explained in 60 brief seconds. So to find out more about this clinically proven and permanent solution to hair loss, call now to receive your free no-obligation information kit. It'll answer all of your questions about hair loss and hair restoration. Plus, we'll also send you this $250 gift certificate just for calling. Every day you wait, you're losing more hair. So don't put it off any longer. You owe it to yourself to find out the facts. Choose hair. Choose Bosley.
Call 800-868-9957. That's 800-868-9957.
Grace, music is unpredictable.
I know I have what it takes.
The Dove Foundation raves. Grace Unplugged is remarkable and inspiring.
This is not about the music, it's about everything else that goes with it.
Dad, were you watching me?
A moving and meaningful film.
This book, his words shook me. It was like my whole world.
That parents and teens should see together, says Focus on the Family.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna drag her back home?
Yeah, I might.
I think maybe you're fighting God. Just stop running.
Grace Unplugged, rated PG, now playing.
Finally this week, the world has watched the Philippines government struggle to help its people after a devastating typhoon. However, the world is providing food and medical help, and an Israeli field hospital is up and running in Tacloban Island, one of the hardest hit areas, and providing much needed medical help to those grief-stricken people. On the first day, the team delivered a premature baby boy to very grateful parents.
We chose the name Israel. Just saying thank you to the Israel people who helped.
Israelis set up their tent hospital in Bogo City on Cebu Island. It's adjacent to a Philippine hospital that has just 3 doctors serving 200,000 people. Colonel Ofer Meron is the manager of the Israeli field hospital. He told reporters by phone that they are seeing hundreds of people a day.
Of course, our main target here is to treat really the hundreds, maybe the thousands of people that we will treat. But, I mean, there's also side targets that we're aiming towards. And one of them is the cooperation with the people here and maybe to give them some of our knowledge.
Israelis usually show up quickly after a disaster.
Some of it is a question of the mentality that we have. When we know there's a disaster, everyone is ready to drop everything and to come in to assist in any place in the world where we're needed.
The team also helped to renovate a school in Bogo City damaged by the typhoon. Students should be able to resume their studies in the next few days. Many times when a natural disaster hits, the Israeli government is there to help out. Well, there's a lot happening in the world, from the Philippines to Geneva to here in Moscow. That's it for this edition. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.